Hello there. Welcome to another episode of Brave, Bold, and Unfiltered. I'm so happy you're here again, whether you're listening or watching on my YouTube channel. These episodes are really designed for you to be inspired, to see yourself in some of the stories, maybe get some tips and perspectives, because perspective is such a powerful thing. And I'm actually going to talk a little bit about that in this episode. So, if you've been following or not, I have been doing a 14-week series where I'm focused on the chapters of my new book, Burn the Map. And honestly, I think it's my best book for sure. And really that's because life goes on and we learn, right? And we grow. But also, I was able to share some snippets, some parts of other people's stories. And I think that really made the story or the book richer. And so I hope you'll get a copy of Burn the Map. But if you're not a reader for whatever reason, you're just not going to get it, you're still going to get so much out of each of these episodes. So I hope if you're watching or listening now and you haven't watched or listened to the prior ones, I would say go back and do that, because there's just so much wisdom and great stuff in this book. And I'm really proud of it. But more importantly, I just want you to find the courage, the inspiration, that little spark, right? That little something that you hear that gives you that moment that you need to do something to help your life be better. So, without further ado, I'm on episode 5, which is chapter 4 of this book. And this one is called Master the Warrior Mindset. And this is really critical. In fact, I probably could have put it as the first chapter, because everything is about your attitude, your perspective, how you look at your life, right? That determines what your life is like. Because when you change your attitude, it's really a crazy thing. When you modify your attitude, it can feel as if everything in your life is different, even if nothing has changed. That's what I've experienced in my life through my daughter Jamie's addiction, through the first time she was shot, through her murder, through the time this so-called friend of ours stole our savings, never to be returned, through this 9-year slow crawl to justice for the guy who murdered Jamie. And if I didn't mention her murder, gee, I guess I should have. But the point is that this has helped me so much. And this is the meatiest chapter of the book. A lot of the chapters have less in them. This one has a little bit more in them, but I'm telling you, every single piece and part of it is so critically important for you. No matter what you're going through, no matter how life has whacked you over the head, or even if life's going pretty well, but you want to kind of move to the next level, it could help you in business. This whole mastering the warrior mindset is about kicking, first of all, the negative attitude, that self-defeating attitude habit. And you might not think of attitude as a habit, right? It's just, something you can't help because this has happened in your life, or this is how you're wired. But truthfully, it really is a habit, because when we start out in life, little kids are, look at me, look at me, look what I can do. They're excited about the littlest things. But then as we grow up, life smacks us around a little bit and we become cynical. We worry. We live with guilt. We have shame. And the list goes on and on and on. And you can't go back and change the past. We all know that. But what you can do is right now decide that you are going to kick this attitude habit. And the good news is I've got a little tip for you right off the bat. And this is, of course, in the book, Burn the Map. So I've got this tip and I call it your disruptor word. So remember how we have this attitude habit, and things start with our thoughts and then they turn into words often and actions or inaction. But again, it starts with our thoughts. And so the whole idea of a disruptor word is to disrupt those thoughts before they ever turn into words, or definitely you don't want them to turn into actions if they're not the right kind of thoughts. Now, the cool thing about this disruptor word, though, is that you could use this to disrupt the same kind of words or the same kind of actions. And listen, I developed this thing. I came up with this idea of this disruptor word. And by the way, I have to use it a lot after the words came flying out of my mouth. So, because it happens in a nanosecond. So anyway, this is how it goes. You pick a word, and it needs to be something that really resonates with you, something that moves you, something that reminds you why you're disrupting these kind of thoughts. And so what you do then is when these thoughts come out, these kind of things, like I put a couple of them in the book that said, a couple of them are this: I will never make it. Life is unfair. Can you relate to that? I've made too many mistakes. No, you haven't. I'm scared of fill in the blanks, or even you idiot. That happened to me. Shortly before I published this book, I called myself an idiot and I had to use my disruptor word. So what is my word? My word is legacy. And the reason is that everything I'm doing, everything that I've overcome, and the reason that I push so hard to be not just okay, but to thrive and live and be happy and hopeful with all the chaos that still surrounds me. It's not a part of my life anymore, but we have this, murder trial and all this great loss and so much. And I've decided that it's not going to be my legacy to be a sad, lonely old woman. And so that's why I chose legacy. You can choose whatever word you want. I would love to hear your word. I'd love for you to do this. And if you are watching on YouTube, please comment. Oh, and by the way, in YouTube now, they have a community. So there's a community tab you can find on my YouTube channel, which is called Valerie Silveira. And you can find the little tab there for community and we can chat there. Like it's like a Facebook or something, but you don't get caught up in all the noise of the scrolling of Facebook. So I'm really wanting to build that community even more. I mean, I've got a lot of followers on Facebook, but it's just so noisy there that no one's seeing anything. And so we're not communicating. It's not this whole community thing it was supposed to be. So I'd love for you to join my community and start commenting and let's have more conversation. I think that's really important. The next section in my book, Burn Them Out, is, I kind of mentioned this earlier. I call it, it's all in the lens, meaning how we focus, what we focus on, how we decide to look at life. And so I mentioned in one of the previous episodes and earlier in the book, I talked about how April, my friend, was just going about her life, right? This is this whole thing about life, just, torching your plans. And she got the call and it was aggressive breast cancer. She actually had two kinds of breast cancer. And thankfully this was 10 years ago. But, imagine some of you unfortunately do know how that feels, or you have close family members that have had that news. And that word aggressive next to the word cancer is frightening. I mean, downright terrifying. And so when April 1st, this is about perspective though. So when April 1st heard her diagnosis, and of course, like anybody else, she was going, why me? Why do I have to be the one that gets cancer? And I could really relate to this because I spent a lot, longer than April did, I spent a lot of time going, why me? Why does Jamie have addiction? I mean, why is that part of my story? And by the way, this book doesn't really talk about addiction other than the little pieces and parts that are in my story that make it important for this book. Still standing up to all the tears is definitely more for that situation. But, that was that whole victim mindset. And, who could blame me and who could blame April? But April is a warrior. She learned about this whole attitude thing long before she got that diagnosis. And so she finally said to herself, why not you? Why should someone else get cancer and not you? It was like she finally realized, what am I doing? Wishing it on somebody else? Why is it okay for someone else and not me? And what an amazing attitude. That single shift in what she decided to focus on. She decided to fight, not to feel sorry for herself. And that kind of reminds me of, how you focus reminds me of in the Bible, Peter, who was called to walk on water by Jesus. And, he's walking along and then he sees the storm and he goes, whoa, oh no, he starts to sink. because he didn't have his eyes focused where he needed to. And I think that's what we do. We spend a lot of time focused in areas that are not helpful to us. And I'm not saying it's easy. It's not easy, because when you have something really serious in your life, like cancer, like someone in addiction, like you lost your job, like the list goes on, right? It's, of course, you're going to be kind of thrown for a loop. You're standing in that unfamiliar ground. Maybe there's ashes all around you and you're just going, everything's in flames. What do I do next? And this is one of the most important things you can do next, because you can do it in an instant. I'm not saying it will change your attitude in an instant, but you can start doing it right away. And you absolutely must do it right away. Start using that disruptor word. That will definitely help. About perspective, one of the stories I told in this book is that I was on a flight one time and we were grounded and it was really hot. And we were on the tarmac for what was supposed to be a few minutes, and it ended up being a lot longer than that. And, of course, the passengers are getting restless and they're starting to complain, and people are getting really agitated. And all of a sudden, the pilot comes on and he said this. And I thought, man, everyone should hear this type of message. He said, something about how he was sorry that, this was taking longer. But he said this is the important part for you to get. He said, I don't know about you, but I would rather be in the air. Oops, wrong way. He said, I don't know about you, but I would rather be on the ground wishing I were in the air than in the air wishing I were on the ground. Man, that hit me, and any irritation that I had was gone in that instant. I thought, that's right. And so we need to use something like that for all of our situations. Consider the bigger picture. Consider a different way of looking at things. And speaking of looking at things, the next section is my big fat confession. And I called this section, Don't Miss Your Life Watching Theirs. And the reason I, went ahead and told on myself is because I know that other people are going through this. And I don't want you to think that I don't struggle with anything, that I've got it all figured out and life is peachy. My life is not peachy. It is very challenging still. In so many ways, I don't really have time to say it all in this podcast. And it wouldn't matter anyway, because everybody's got stuff. Everybody's got a story. We all have challenges. But what's important for you to know is that I still struggle with things, but I keep working at it. And this is one of the things I struggle with, is looking at other people's lives and wondering why, back to what April said, why me? Why are these things happening? I don't understand. I'm really working hard to listen to God and try to make sure I'm doing what he wants me to do. And, I help a lot of people. I mean, I've got so many free resources like this podcast that can help people, and, blah, blah, blah. And, I don't understand. I look around and I go, nobody in my family, none of my siblings are dealing with anything close to this, not even in the same realm. And, I don't feel like they're better people than me. I don't feel like they've made better choices. We've all made, wrong choices. But here I am, right? No matter how many times I look at their lives or my friends, none of them are going through any kind of stuff that I am, or Rich, or us as a couple, or including Sean and Nikki in it, with Sean's health issues and so many challenges. And it's hard not to just get frustrated and go, why? I don't understand. But you know what? I've discovered that no matter how many times I do that, nothing ever gets fixed. Nothing ever gets resolved, and I never feel any better. And so I think we have to really be careful spending too much time looking at other people's lives, because we don't really know anyway what their lives are really like, right? It's like an iceberg. What is below the surface? I talked more about that in this book. So I want to give you another tip. So I told you about the disruptor word. I hope you will use it. Please, please comment here. You can always send me an email too, by the way. If you're not on my email list, you should go to valeriesilveira.com and get on it. I send emails at least once a week, and there's a lot of encouragement, and you'll learn about new resources like new podcast episodes and stuff. So, but here's another one. This is a secret weapon, an attitude, and especially when life's not going well, especially then. And it's such a buzzword, and it's such a thing that's talked about so much that I think people discount it. And it's gratitude. And I really want you to stick with me on this, because we think that gratitude is, well, you got to be so deep. And I don't feel deep right now. And I don't feel like I have anything to be grateful for. You know what? I'm going to cut right here to a conversation I had with my niece, Shawnie. And if you've been listening to these episodes, you know that Shawnie was Jamie's best friend from the time Shawnie was born. She's 3 months younger than Jamie. And they were just besties. I mean, they would laugh. I can still hear and see them laughing together like nobody else. And then she's my brother's daughter. And her mom and my brother got divorced, and her mom remarried. And so she had a sibling from this other marriage. So he's not my nephew, but her little brother. And he was killed in a car accident. I mean, it was really hard and really sad, obviously, for his parents and for Shawnie. I don't know what it feels like to lose a sibling. A child, yes. But a sibling, I don't know, thankfully. But in between that, she also lost her dog. I didn't mention that in the book, but I mean, this stuff's huge. So Shawnie lost her brother and Jamie within a month of each other. And you talk about life knocking the wind out of you. Let's hear what Shawnie has to say about gratitude.
Shortly after Shane, I received a gratitude journal as a gift from someone. And when I first got it, I thought, how rude. Why are they giving me a gratitude journal? I have nothing to be grateful for. And to your point, gratitude is a buzzword, and you hear about it, and some people might think it's checking a box, like, okay, today I'm grateful for my house, and today I'm grateful for my meal, which wonderful things to be grateful for. However, there's so much more depth to gratitude, and I really learned that when I started using this journal, which I'll talk more about. But I mean, there's Harvard studies about how gratitude rewires your brain. And I think that how it helped me is that every single day when I would go write in it about my family and lots of memories of my brother, so many things about my brother in that journal specifically, and so many things about Jamie and my relationship with her, that I started to realize it started to tip the scale of, if my body is a whole 100% and 99% of me was sadness and anger, it started to tip the scale the other way and to fill my body with happiness 1 ounce at a time. And I think that is how gratitude actually works. It's not right away. It's not with a single thought of I'm grateful for my car. It's the repeated daily rewiring of your brain to look for things and to really feel in your body, in your heart, the things that you're grateful for.
Pretty amazing, huh? Her whole perspective on it is so good. What did you think about her getting that gratitude journal and then thinking, what in the world? I mean, didn't she say even how rude? I mean, isn't that what happens when someone says to us, you still have things to be grateful for? I'm sure if somebody had said that to me after Jamie was murdered, I might have thought, give me a minute here. Or all the 15 years of her addiction, or the first time she was shot, or, on and on and on. And I know you can relate to this. But let me tell you something about gratitude, my friends. This is exactly the time when you do it, when life is tough. So I have this gratitude box, and I started a few years ago, and I started with a glass. So listen, you don't need any fancy container. I literally had a glass that somebody gave me on New Year's Eve, and she wrote on it, and it was, put gratitude in here. And so I filled that up, and then I got a jar, and then I filled that up. Then I got a different jar, and I filled that up. Well, I had this box called, on it said God box, and it's like this wooden box, like this big. I guess if you're listening, you can't see me going this big. But anyway, I have filled it up a couple of times, and actually right now it's overflowing. So I have this big overflow box sitting right here next to me. And I counted it one time because I thought, wouldn't it be interesting to know? I have over 3,000 pieces of gratitude in there. And do you want to know when I put in the most? Very tough days, tough times. I got a lot of tough times. No wonder I have 3,000 in there. But it really is the secret weapon because, like Shawnie said, it rewires your brain. Use your disruptor word and get in the habit of intentional gratitude. That's the same thing that April uses, and but only in a different way. And I explained in the book what she does, but she has these reflections that she does. And what did she call that? I've got so much in my brain right now, I can't remember anything, I swear. She calls it her saturation method. So every morning on her walk, she reflects on 3 things she's grateful for from the last 24 hours. Then at night, she thinks about 3 things she could have done differently that align with her goals. And then 3 things, big or small, that she's proud of from that day. These practices are not just some guru thing, you guys. They work. Let me tell you, I would love to hear that you start a gratitude, an intentional gratitude, not just occasionally going, oh yeah, I'm grateful for that, or doing it just when times are good. I'd love to know how your gratitude practice works. You know, do you have a box or a hat or a whatever, or a journal? Or any other kind of method. I'd love to hear from you. Please comment on this video for sure. So the next section is called Choose a Comma. And I started this section telling you about what happened when I was 7 years old. And I haven't talked about this publicly. I hadn't had it in a book until Burn the Map. And just really out of respect for my mom. And it's just, I felt like it was time that I needed to share it in the most possible, respectful way possible, because I don't want anyone, well, it isn't that I don't want anyone to think anything about my mom. You can think whatever you want, but I don't want it. I didn't want it to hurt my mom. Let's put it that way. So when I was 7 years old, the ambulance came to our house one night and my mom was laying in the hallway moaning. And you know, you only have certain snippets of memory when you're 7 years old, but I remember that vividly. And then the ambulance came. And then my next memory is that we were at the neighbors and my mom was in a bathrobe and she was telling me that she had the flu and we had to stay at the neighbors for a week. My mom was a single mom. And so back in those days, you know, you didn't lock your doors. And so she told me to go get my things. So down the street, I went with my little friend and, you know, I can remember down the street, taking a left, my house was on the right. And I went into the house and got my things. And I went into the bathroom to get my toothbrush. And when I went into the bathroom, there was a pill bottle sitting there and it was all broken up. And I knew in that instant that it wasn't the flu, but I never said anything. I didn't say anything to my little friend that was with me, and I didn't say anything to anybody for 20 years. And then I finally told my mom a few years after that. I told her that I knew, and I mean, she was shocked. And, you know, that's a trauma that a little girl carried around. But it's kind of weird how I never think of it like that little girl. I just think about, oh, it was just this memory and it was a long time ago. But obviously, there's a little bit of shame involved in that, or why didn't I tell anybody for 20 years? And so I thought it was really interesting when Mona told me her story. And by the way, Mona, I did a whole episode with Mona even before this book launched in June. And I'd like you to go back and watch that episode or listen to it with Mona, because she talks about her childhood story. And hers is quite different in what happened, but just as equally traumatic, probably even more so, actually, because it was so much more public and it was such a shock and it was a big change of life. And she handled it in a way that is so shocking. She was 13 years old. And the way Mona was able to self counsel herself through that trauma and not let it make her bitter or a victim is really quite remarkable. And so I call it using a comma. So what happens to us is we go through these tough things and we are tempted to put a period, even if we don't know we're doing it. We put a period at the end of the story, like that's it. That's it. That's my story and I'm sticking to it, right? And we run with it. We know people like this, and maybe we've been like this. So I'm going to encourage you right now, if you have put a period at the end of anything that has happened in your life, I want you to take out that pen and make it a comma. Yes, this thing happened to you. Yes, whatever is going on in your life is tough. It's probably not fair. Maybe it's your choices, maybe it's not. Maybe it's a combination. But whatever has happened, don't let that be the end. That is not how your story should end. It is not how it is going to end, and do not allow it to affect the rest of your life. I'm going to talk later on in a future episode about how everything can be used for good. And I think I'm living proof of that. I say that humbly, but I'm living proof that you can take horrific things, horrific situations, and turn them into something good. I can't change what happened to my daughter. I can't change all the trauma and everything that's happened in my life, but I can use it. I can package up that sadness, that darkness, that grief, that loss. I can package that up with something that is good. So I'm not, trying to alter the past, but I'm going to use it. I'm going to use it for as much good as I can until I take my last breath. And I encourage you to do that, whatever that means for you. I do, by the way, I do very, very limited coaching. Well, I call it mentoring. Uh, if that's something you'd be interested in, you can go to valeriesilveira.com and check out mentoring. I mean, it's a very intense but freeing and empowering process that's modified and customized just for you. But it's only for very, very serious people that want to go through a real process of change. So I just thought I'd mention that. I want to just read from the last paragraph of this chapter called Master the Warrior Mindset. Don't allow what happened to become the title of your story. If you've already placed a period, do what Mona, Sarah, and I did. Change yours to a comma. It's how you start winning the battle for your mind. It's how you silence the stories that tried to silence you. Like the story about my mom tried to silence me. Like Mona's childhood trauma tried to silence her, but we refused. And so I encourage you to get this book, get Burn the Map, because it's really not a very big book, not very thick, but there's so much in it. I think every chapter you'll be going, wow, I really relate to that. So I hope you get a copy of that book, but for sure, continue to subscribe to this channel, or if you're on YouTube, or subscribe to the podcast wherever you're listening. And so you'll make sure to get notification for all upcoming episodes. Go back and listen or watch older episodes too. And like I said, if you're on YouTube, comment. I want to hear from you. I would love to have conversation with you. Since these videos are on YouTube, the very best place for me to converse with you about them is right there. Okay, my friends, until next week, where our topic is going to be let go or be dragged. I will see you then.